Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everybody. Today I'm gonna switch it up a little bit and give you guys a story, a homegrown in Hawaii story, right? So we have Hawaii's, this is very recent, it happened in a few years ago. We have the Hawaii prosecuting attorney who was married to our police chief, right? These are the two people at the top, and they were based out of Honolulu or Oahu, and that is our main island. It's a big city. It's kind of like a mini LA, right? Millions of people live there. They had a lot of power, and our prosecuting attorney was dating the most infamous crime boss, so a drug dealer, a murderer, and she was having a long time affair with him, and she and her husband she through her husband would use the police force to also help her boy toy, right? Her affair that she was having, her crime boss on the side, and to their benefit. And this was a very deep level of corruption that happened in our state. They actually couldn't use the FBI that we had in Hawaii. The corruption was so deep that they had to bring in all new FBI agents from the mainland to investigate this. Also, many police officers went to jail over this. They also went to jail over this. Many state and city officials went to jail over this. They lost their jobs over this. And so it's just an interesting story about how a prosecuting attorney, which is like a DA, right? Different label, and can use their power for very nefarious reasons, right? And how does it work? How deep does it go? And the story is very interesting. I'm going to share you a couple of news clips. And if you're really interested, I think there are a couple of YouTubers that covered this in extreme depth. And this is Joe Moore, and he's like the legend of the newscasters here in Hawaii. He's been presenting the news to us since I was probably in diapers or earlier. Anyways, let's hear what he has to say about the Kealohas. Mr. and Mr. Kealoha, crime wave of Hawaii.
Fraud and deception by a husband and wife desperate to maintain status as Honolulu's power couple. Strong accusations from the federal government against Louis and Catherine Kealoha, who were arrested by the FBI this morning. The former Honolulu police chief and his deputy prosecutor wife were indicted today. They're free on $100,000 bond. The Honolulu prosecutor's office...
So apparently this news clip was, I didn't review them, I just picked a few, right, from different stages of the case. They did end up both going to federal prison. This obviously was from when it first broke, right? So probably had the most views, so it was the most popular story about it that YouTube pushed out for me, so.
Placed Catherine on leave without pay. They, along with retired Major Gordon Shiraishi, Officer Bobby Nguyen, Lieutenant Derek Hahn, and Sergeant Daniel Sellers were indicted, accused of working together to frame Catherine's uncle, Gerard Puana, for mailbox theft. But the FBI...
So, of course, they got to get him on a low-level crime, right? They got to pin him with something so that they can open and start the investigation. So, it was a mailbox theft, you know? It was a drive-by fruiting.
Says their investigation is about more than a mailbox. They are accusing the Kealohas of bank fraud by taking advantage of Children's Trust Fund to pay for their lavish lifestyle. This is an investigation we've been following for years. Tonight, we have several reports. We begin with Bridget Namada with the new accusations brought to light. Bridget?
Well, Joe, the FBI spent 2 years investigating the Kealohas after the mistrial of Gerard Puana. The Kealohas accused him of stealing their mailbox in 2013. The FBI now claims Louis and Catherine stole money for personal gain, like car payments for a Maserati, and spending $26,000 for a brunch. The actions of the Kealohas and members of an elite police squad cast a shadow over the Honolulu Police Department, says the United States acting attorney.
But the most troubling aspect of this case is the way these powerful defendants allegedly manipulated the justice system for their own purposes.
The 20-count indictment against the Kealohas includes conspiracy, obstruction, false statements, and bank fraud. The federal government alleges the husband and wife team swindled hundreds of thousands of dollars from banks.
Don't be fooled by looks. Don't be fooled by people's high positions. And the FBI uncovered some crazy stuff about this couple.
Credit unions, even a disabled uncle, a 98-year-old grandmother, and 2 young children under Catherine's guardianship. Why? To fund their lavish lifestyle. Court documents reveal Catherine was appointed trustee and guardian for 2 children back in 2004 when she was an attorney in private practice. She opened individual trust accounts for the minors ages 12 and 10. When another attorney questioned her about the trust account status, the indictment alleges she created an alias, Allison Lee Wong, to cover her tracks. Wong, the fictional assistant, sent emails to make it appear relevant documents were being prepared.
However, something was very much amiss. The funds were gone.
Instead, the indictment accuses Catherine of stealing $150,000 from the trust funds for personal expenses for Louis and herself. Between 2009 and 2010, the indictment also alleges Catherine stole investment money from her family members, like Uncle Gerard Puana and her grandmother, to pay for lavish expenses. Expenses include a $26,000 tab at the Sheraton Waikiki for Louis' police chief induction brunch, car payments for a Mercedes-Benz and Maserati, Elton John tickets, even a trip to Disneyland.
When family members became concerned about what happened to their investments, the Kealohas used...
Like I said, the corruption that was uncovered was so deep. So what ended up happening was when the FBI came and really started digging, that's why police got arrested, because they had everybody basically helping her boy toy, the mafia, the mobster, the syndicate, whatever you want to call it, the crime boss, in his crimes. He had police at his disposal. All he had to do was call his girlfriend, who was our prosecuting attorney at the time, and make shit happen, right? So there were murders covered up, and it was eventually uncovered.
Use their considerable power and influence as public officials to launch a secret campaign to cover up their financial crimes and to discredit their victims with the help of a few friends from the department's elite criminal intelligence unit.
This is where the federal government alleges Louis and Catherine came up with an elaborate scheme to frame Catherine's uncle Gerard Puana. In 2013, with help from officers in the Criminal Intelligence Unit, the indictment claims the group falsely stated it was Puana who stole the Kealoha's mailbox with bank statements inside.
Every day, hardworking men and women of the Honolulu Police Department put their safety on the line to do a difficult job. Abuses of power undermine that mission and the efforts of those who protect our neighborhoods.
The Kealoha's attorneys are due back in court November 20th. Joe.
Thank you, Bridget. The attorney for the Kealohas says federal prosecutors are tainting public opinion. But in the end, they will not be able to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Manola Morales joins us with that part of the story. Manola?
Joe, Attorney Miles Briner tells me that the testimony federal prosecutors are counting on to prove their case isn't reliable, and the Kealohas were not having money problems, so there's no motive. The Kealohas walked out of federal court saying they will eventually be vindicated.
We appreciate the continued community support.
That didn't age well.
Forward to our day in court.
And when asked about the list of charges in the indictment,
in your opinion, what they handed you today in court, were those valid documents? No.
their attorney sat down with us today and tells me that the indictment presented in court today lays out a lot of details that are designed to paint a very harsh picture of the Kealohas and meant to justify the 2 years of investigation by federal prosecutors.
This is designed to get the public's attention, to contaminate, or if you say taint the well, to convince the public that she must be guilty. Otherwise, why would we have indicted her? So by the time they come into court, it's going to be virtually impossible, I submit, to find a panel of jurors who doesn't have an opinion about this case.
Briner also discredits former HPD officer Niles Silva and Catherine Kealoha's uncle Gerard Puana, who provided testimony to the grand jury.
In Hawaii, it is a big thing of who you know, right? When you try to get a job or when you apply for a position, who you know, who you're related to. And so you'll hear that a lot of people in the case are related. It's very normal. You're not supposed to do this, right? So, but
Both individuals, in particular Niles Silva, has lied repeatedly to the government, both to government agents as well as to the grand jury, and the government acknowledges that.
As for a motive for the Kealohas, Briner tells me there really isn't one. Were the Kealohas even having money problems?
Everyone has money problems in Hawaii, but money problems, it's all relative. No, as far as I'm aware, neither Kat Kealoha or her husband have had money problems. They both were working full-time, deputy prosecutor, chief of police.
The attorney who represented Puana in the criminal trial for mailbox theft disagrees and says this day was a long time coming.
Mr. Gerard and his family, who have been the ones who've been put through the ringer, he was arrested, he was put in prison, he was subject to the news for 2 years where everybody presumed he was guilty. It's a long time coming for them.
I also asked Briner about Allison Lee Wong, who federal prosecutors say was a fictional assistant that Catherine Kealoha used to conceal her lies about that trust account. Briner tells me that never happened. Joe?
Thanks, Manolo. The charges against the Kealohas come more than 4 years after this all began. It was June of 2013 that they reported their mailbox was stolen. In December of 2014,
they brought the heat on
FBI
themselves.
was called to investigate alleged corruption at HPD stemming from the mailbox theft. Last December, Louis Kealoha was given a target letter informing him that he was the target of a federal investigation. In February of this year, he officially retired. The indictments today put some of the puzzle pieces in this investigation together, but some mysteries remain. Gina Mangieri is always investigating and joins us now. Gina, one of those is who stole the Kealoha's mailbox?
Okay, in all of these arrests this week, that's the unanswered question. I asked the feds that very question today. I also asked the attorney for the Kealohas, and not surprisingly, I got two very different answers.
Back in court today, two former HPD officers convicted with the Kealohas will serve prison time for their roles in the fraud and conspiracy cases. A federal judge sentencing Derek Hahn to 3.5 years in prison, while Bobby Wynn will serve 4.5 years. The judge says the two officers may not have been the mastermind of the conspiracy, but they played major roles in executing it and then covering it up. Manolo Morales reports. Federal Judge J. Michael Seabright pointed out that the two HPD officers did not benefit financially from the conspiracy, which is why they received lighter sentences than the Kealohas, but they did lie repeatedly to cover it up. Seabright clearly saw Bobby Wynn as someone who played a bigger role in the conspiracy and gave him 1 more year than Derek Hahn. Wynn's attorney argued that he was just a footman and was following orders. He said the role and rank is so important in this case, and he was not in any position to defy orders. But Seabright pointed out that Wynn was the one who initially identified the person.
So a part of why I'm presenting this, right? So what made me think of this case is the Watts case. Okay, so a lot of people don't believe that a DA would be corrupt or that other people would participate in such high level corruption. They would risk their job. These people, some of these cops that are serving time didn't even gain financially. Like they said, they're just following orders. And we've seen it throughout time, right? Throughout history of people doing really shady things, right? Because they're following orders.